The Collapse video series is for entertainment purposes only. Do not commit acts of violence. The governments of North America issue an open invitation for people with useful skills and their families to return to the cities. They are looking for skilled trades, mechanics, plumbers, electricians, and they are looking for professionals and paraprofessionals, doctors, accountants, dental hygienists, etc. The people who were originally from the city and fled to the country jump at the offer. They have not felt welcome in the country and don't have the attachment to it that the long-term residents do. Still, there is some sadness. They went through a lot together with the country folk this past year. Bonds were formed that aren't easily broken. The return to the city is bittersweet for those who go. Many who could go to this city decide to remain. Knowing this isn't over yet, they'd rather stay with the people they've come to trust. The government also puts out an open invitation for people to go to work on the farms in the Midwest. The government doesn't say why, but it's because the lack of fuel, especially wood, in the Great Plains caused massive casualties in the winter. People lived in the area before homes were heated with natural gas, oil, or electricity, but those early settlers and natives prepared for winter. The natives burned cow or buffalo poop when they weren't near a wooded area. Pioneers in the area learned to do the same, gathering piles of cow poop as winter approached. The locals this last winter did not have the skills, resources, or supply chain to prepare. To the government's frustration, few people accept the invitation to leave their homes and families to work on the farms. The government decides it must begin drafting people from the country to work on the farms. They also draft undesirables from the city. The military is not taking the stock of seedlings already growing in greenhouses. The seedlings would be too difficult to transport out to the government farms in the Midwest. The government has decided to let the locals grow their crops and then take some of the harvest later in the year. There aren't as many seedlings as desired due to the seed shortage. Very few people knew how to save seeds from last year's crop. There are some GMO seeds available for purchase from those who looted the seed factories, but they are expensive and the locals have little to exchange. Still, there are people in every village who have had some success saving or acquiring seeds, and there is a crop of seedlings to plant. The situation with breeding stock of animals is much worse. There are almost no cows or pigs. They were all eaten. And the only chickens are the few the villages voted not to slaughter even as people starved to death. The military took a few but left the rest to locals so they can build up populations. Knowing the military is going to come back through at harvest time, people plant 2 gardens, one for the military to see and one in secret. They go into the woods and clear small areas for sunlight. They plant less recognizable crops. Everyone knows what corn and wheat look like, even if they've never left the city. But few people who've never farmed or gardened can recognize a potato plant. They may have never seen sorrel or Jerusalem artichokes. They don't know what okra looks like before it's sliced. Plants are carefully selected and placed to avoid detection. Gardeners aren't worried about deer or other animals eating them since overhunting has depleted those populations. But when they do see signs of deer, they eagerly set out traps to catch the animal. Dissent in the military, which has been growing since shortly after grid down, now blossoms aggressively. Soldiers are shocked that they are ordered to seize food from their fellow countrymen who are obviously starving. The soldiers who did not have a problem giving food commandeered from warehouses to the government instead of the people, as long as they and their families were fed, now have to look at the children they are taking from. Some don't have a problem with it. Sociopaths are in all facets of society. But most are demoralized by what they are ordered to do. They want to do something about this but don't know how. If an opportunity presents itself for them to help, they'll take it. Around North America, a dormant threat is emerging. Former military, especially combat veterans, are forming new marauder groups. They laid low during the first year because the chaos was too dangerous. In a gunfight, even if you defeat the opponent in the moment, if you are hit by any bullets at all, there is no hospital to go to and no antibiotics to take. The chances of infection are high. The more targets you hit, the greater the risk. Combat veterans know this. Many have been shot before. In the first year, they relied on their own supplies and those of the towns they were in. Now that those supplies are gone and the chaos has subsided after multiple die-offs, the units that formed over the past year or earlier are preparing to take what they need. Some units vow to only take from the government or city, but other units are prepared to take from anyone. They are heavily armed and highly experienced. Local towns have no chance against them. In high-level government meetings, cabinet members and the president's immediate staff can see that she is no longer in charge. The Secretary of Defense is running things. She is still signing off on orders, complying with the letter of the law, or in this case, the Constitution. While the officials don't like it, they aren't sure how to handle it since she's still signing off. They decide to play along and pretend the president is still in charge. No one speaks of the elephant in the room. They keep the problem a secret from everyone under them. Most of the government does not know. They may wonder, but they don't know. Tensions in the Middle East continue to escalate. Not all the Muslims in the Middle East are the same religious sect or ethnicity. The tensions have been there for decades, perhaps centuries, but were managed in the previous world order. There was an uncomfortable stasis with bubbling conflicts just below the surface that occasionally boiled over. Now there is little to contain those conflicts except the fear of what will happen next. New alliances are forming. The most powerful enemies among the Muslims of the Middle East are Saudi Arabia and Iran. Both have been courting Turkey to join in an alliance. Saudi Arabia would seem to have the advantage because both Saudi Arabia and Turkey have Sunni majorities, as opposed to Iran's Shia majority. But Turkey can see that despite Saudi Arabia's impressive arsenal, it hasn't trained enough men to use the equipment purchased by the elites. Turkey decides it would rather choose a winner. It allies with Iran, eyeing Saudi Arabia's oil fields for potential conquest. Saudi Arabia offers Egypt food in exchange for joining in an alliance. Saudi Arabia was able to make food purchases with its oil sales. Egypt and Saudi Arabia have a history of conflict, but both countries are Arabs and both are Sunni. While Egypt's military pre-collapse was stronger than Iran's, it has been weakened by the famine in the past year, much more so than Iran. Saudi Arabia is optimistic that the combination of Egypt's trained military and personnel and Saudi Arabia's high-end military equipment can defeat the Turkey-Iran alliance. In the Strait of Hormuz, Iran demands that Saudi oil tankers hand over 30% of their cargo as the price of passage. Saudi Arabia has Navy ships accompany their oil tankers. They attempt to pass through without paying. Iran opens fire. Israel has not been invaded or destroyed. It has nuclear weapons that it is willing to use, and other countries know that. However, much of the nation's farming enterprise has been severely damaged by sabotage, and there has been a successful campaign by Israel's enemies to pressure third parties not to sell goods to Israel. The country became isolated from trade and unable to grow enough to feed its population. The famine has been intense. While the country continues to exist, its population has been decimated. It is barely surviving. The people of Brazil and Argentina are concerned about food security for the first time in decades. The potash shortage means they will be producing less than usual. In Brazil's case, they will be producing far less than usual. The soil in Brazil is actually quite poor. Most of the nutrients were in the vegetation of the rainforest that was burned down to make room for farms. In order to get a crop, they need several types of fertilizer. Potash is only one of the inputs, but it is essential. Fearing famine in South America, both Brazil and Argentina decide to substantially limit food exports. At the moment, they have some potash reserved and some harvest reserved. They want to conserve so it lasts. China decreases rations to its citizens. While it had stockpiled a few years of grain before the collapse, it was not properly stored. Officials are startled to find that much of it has molded, rotted, or been eaten by rats. The chairman of the Communist Party holds a handful of officials responsible for the debacle. He has them arrested and tried. This does not satisfy the people. They are still hungry, and they still blame the chairman. The people of China are growing very angry at their government.